The phone call came like a thunderclap. I held the receiver to my ear as my daughter-in-law's voice cut through the silence. "We already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." Her words dripped ice water over my heart. For 3 years I had been paying their rent, furnishing their home, and filling their fridge. Special people? Clearly, I wasn't one of them. I stood in my own living room, clutching the phone, while my son avoided my gaze and his wife lounged on the couch I bought for them. My pale pink dress, the one I spent $200 on and dreamed of wearing to his wedding, hung unused in my closet. Weeks of planning, $1,000 set aside as a gift, and all the excitement of celebrating my only son's big day, gone in a single breath. In that moment I felt frozen with humiliation. I could almost see the wedding photos before me. My daughter-in-law's proud parents smiling next to the newlyweds, her siblings toasting with champagne. I had helped pay for her wedding dress, for the honeymoon, even for the rings. And I wasn't in any of those pictures. A week later, on the exact day of my humiliation, the phone rang again. This time it was my daughter-in-law sounding frantic. The rent was overdue, the landlord was threatening to kick them out, and I had forgotten to make the transfer. Her voice trembled as if her world was ending. For a moment I remembered all the frantic trips to the bank I had made on their behalf, the nights I ate rice and beans, so they could have money for takeout, the weekends I canceled with friends to wire them more cash. I had done all this hoping for a scrap of their love, or at least respect. But now as I listened, something inside me snapped. The tiny ember of anger I had been nursing for days flared into a cold, hard flame. "I warned you," I said quietly, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I only help special people." Silence. I could almost hear the color draining from her face. For years, every sweet "please, Mom" had been sugar in a trap I didn't fully see. Now it was glaringly obvious. I had been nothing more than a walking ATM with feelings. I remembered every time she had asked for money, the wedding dress, the honeymoon, even her hotel room expenses. That tender voice had always been the same. Sweet when needed, sharp when I didn't comply. Tears slid down my cheeks, but these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage and indignation. I wept for the foolish mother I had been. Bending over backwards, shrinking my own life to a shadow. All for children who considered me a nuisance at best. My love, apparently, had a price tag, and I was the one paying it. The door to my freedom had been in sight for a long time, and I hadn't seen it. But Lena's chilling phrase, "special people," opened that door wide at last. The next morning, I looked in the mirror. I still saw a woman with tired eyes and lines etched by years of caregiving. But for the first time in a long while, I also saw determination glinting back at me. Gone was the despair. In its place was a steeliness I barely recognized. I brewed my usual morning coffee, but for the first time I didn't check my phone to see if Max had texted to apologize. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table where I had once meticulously budgeted for their needs. And I did some math of my own. 3 years of $500 rent each month. $18,000. Groceries and essentials. At least another $7,000. Birthday, holiday, anniversary gifts. Maybe $3,000. Medical bills I'd quietly paid. $800. The car loan they never repaid. $2,500. The air conditioner fix in their apartment. $600. A new sofa set I bought them. $1,200. By the time I finished scribbling figures into my notebook, it totaled over $33,000. $33,000 from my modest savings and my late husband's inheritance, all gone. Blown out the window to keep 2 grown adults comfortable, who couldn't even pretend to include me in their lives. 10 minutes later my phone rang. Max's name flashed on the screen, and I felt the old panic rise in my chest, until I remembered. I'd already changed. Let it ring. It stopped. Then Lena called. She probably saw the call from him, miss. Let it ring too. My new phone skill was ignoring calls from people who didn't value me. Finally a text. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. I deleted it unread and went about my morning as if nothing had happened. When I left the house to take a walk later that day, it felt strange but exhilarating. No errands for them. No rushing to the bank or pharmacy for Lena's requests. I simply walked for the sake of walking. I passed the park where Max used to play as a boy. It was a vivid memory how he'd run into my arms declaring, "Mom, you're the best." When did that little boy become a man who saw me as nothing but a rent check? The question haunted me as I strolled aimlessly. My feet eventually took me to the bank branch where I had spent hours helping them financially. I knew the branch manager, Mr. Klein, who had once gently chided me when I came in late for a transfer. Through the window, he saw me and gave a worried wave. I squared my shoulders and walked into his office. "Mr. Klein," I said, "I need to cancel the automatic payments for my son's rent." He looked genuinely concerned. "For 3 years those transfers have been a given, Mrs. Berger. Is something wrong?" "Yes," I replied steadily. I finally opened my eyes. "No more transfers. And please advise on how to secure my account so no one else can touch it." As he processed the cancellation, my phone buzzed incessantly in my bag. Max, Lena, Max, desperation in their caller IDs. I silenced it. My newfound peace was worth 1,000 rings. "Are you sure about this?" Mr. Klein asked softly when I thanked him and stood to leave. He knew me as a kind but weary woman who helped her family. "You're not being pressured by anyone, are you?" His genuine care warmed my heart. "No, dear," I smiled. "For once, I'm doing the pressuring on myself." Walking out of the bank, a lightness I hadn't felt in years fluttered in my chest. The burden of pleasing everyone was finally lifting. That night, my phone rang again. This time I recognized the stress in Max's voice. He demanded I come home. By then, the banshee wails of any guilt or fear were gone. I let it ring. Later, Lena. I ignored her too. I was my own person again for now. Early the next morning, I grabbed coffee and drove downtown. My first stop was a law office I'd visited years ago for my husband's estate. Attorney Jonathan Wright was a specialist in elder law. He listened as I poured out the saga, the secret wedding, the $33,000 of my money, Lena's plea for rent after dumping me, and the cold way they'd looked at me. "Your situation sounds like a textbook case of financial and emotional abuse," he said gravely. "What they tried to do yesterday, bringing in a lawyer about your competence, it's a common strategy to seize control of someone's money. It's illegal if it's done under false pretenses." His words were a bomb and a warning. We spent hours documenting everything. Bank statements showing each payment, copies of the wedding invitation, or lack thereof, even screenshots of Lena's proud social posts. "We'll need all of this," Mr. Wright said. "I'll draft a will amendment to protect your assets, and if necessary, we can pursue legal action against them for elder abuse." I left feeling both shaken and empowered. Shaken that my own son had crossed such a line, and empowered that I had an ally to help set it right. On the drive home, I stopped at the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summers, had seen me 100 times bringing home things for Max and Lena. That morning I said, "Mr. Summers, I need to change all the locks on my house and get the best security system you have." He blinked, then nodded. This time the purchase was for me, and it felt right. As the locksmith changed the last lock and the security installer set up cameras, I realized the house I'd filled with love and things for others was now my own sanctuary again. Later that day, I went to the salon, the first time in over a year. "Carol, is that really you?" My stylist Cynthia laughed when I sat down. "You look like you're glowing." "I feel like a new woman," I said, settling into the chair. For once, I spent money on myself without guilt. A stylish cut, a fresh color, a manicure. Cynthia and I chatted about our lives, her kids, my past. Not once did I have to talk about debts or schedules, or how much I had spent on her kids. It was ordinary and it felt amazing. "You look beautiful, Carol. And more important, you look free," Cynthia said when she handed me the mirror. I grinned. "I finally remembered I deserve a little freedom," I agreed. When I got home, there was a surprise. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Brooks, was on my porch with a coffee mug in her hand. "Mrs. Berger, I'm so sorry to drop by unannounced, but yesterday I heard shouting from your house and I was worried. I thought something might have happened to you," she said softly. Her genuine concern nearly brought me to tears. Here was a stranger, a simple neighbor, showing me more care than my own son had in years. "Please come in," I said, stepping aside. I poured 2 cups of coffee, and we sat in my living room. I hesitated, but the warmth in her eyes encouraged me to tell her everything. Mrs. Brooks listened as I spilled out the hurt. The secret ceremony, the financial support, the demands, the insult of the words special people, and their latest attempt to take away my autonomy. When I finished, she sat quietly for a moment, tears glistening. Then she squeezed my hand. "They did the right thing by cutting them off," she said firmly. 5 years ago, I did the same. My daughter-in-law said almost the same things your Lena did, wanting money and then pitying me. I was miserable at first, threats, guilt trips, everything. But 6 months later she called me, apologized, and now we actually have a good relationship, because I didn't base my love on how many dollars I gave. I set myself free, and she learned to stand on her own 2 feet. Hearing her story made me realize I wasn't crazy or cruel for finally saying no. I was brave and wise. That evening, for the first time in months, I called my sister Clara. We hadn't talked in ages because our conversations had always been dominated by how much I sent them news. Now I just needed someone who knew me when I wasn't drowning in other people's demands. Clara listened quietly. When I was done, she exhaled. "Carol, I've had so many conversations where you'd announce how much money you gave those kids," she said. "Always proud of it, as if it was the best story to tell. I wish I'd spoken up, but I never knew how. Your story? You've been funding your own erasure. After all this time, those children never once said to me, 'I miss my mom' or 'I love you, Mom.' It was always 'Mom helped me with this' or 'Mom bought me that.' It tore my heart out hearing it." Her words stung, but they were true. The most painful truth sometimes is also liberating. I understood now. They weren't just taking my money. They were already factoring it into their future, as if I were an unavoidable expense rather than a person. While I had been spending on them, they had been planning life after me. When the money was theirs for the taking. That night, as I lay awake, I mourned more than just my lost funds. I mourned the son I thought I had, the boy who once ran into my arms, dreaming only of being close to me. But even in grief, I felt a flicker of gratitude. At last, I had clarity. I could see them as they truly were. And so I made plans, smart, practical plans. I would protect myself, change the will, secure the accounts, document everything, gather the truth. I started with small acts. I installed the security cameras so I'd always know who was at my door, and changed my accounts to new banks that had nothing to do with them. I even filed for a restraining order quietly, preparing for the day they couldn't just barge in uninvited. That very night, at dawn, I woke to bright sunlight. The sting of betrayal had turned to something else. I felt alive. No longer the fearful woman at their mercy. I was Carol again, strong, whole, and free. As I sipped my morning tea, I realized that the first day of my new life had begun. Weeks later, everything changed again. One morning I drove into town and saw 3 cars outside my home. Max, Lena, and another stranger I didn't know. They had keys to my door. I had given them years ago. My heart thudded. Finally, the confrontation I'd been preparing for had come. I took a breath and walked up to my front door. On the other side, I found a scene I'll never forget. Max sitting on my couch with his head in his hands. Lena paced like a caged bird. And a stern-looking man, a lawyer, was rifling through papers on my dining table, my personal documents. He looked up at me with that confident smirk. "Good morning, Mrs. Berger. I'm Jonathan Fisher, family law attorney," he introduced himself. "Your family is concerned about your well-being." Shock flashed through me. They had invaded my home with legal muscle. They meant to declare me mentally unfit. My own living room had become a hostile courtroom. I cleared my throat. "What situation are you talking about?" I asked, voice firm. Lena jumped in, adopting that faux sweet tone she reserved for manipulative moments. "Mom, darling, we're just worried about you. We noticed you stopped all the transfers. We thought maybe you've been under stress. Maybe you need help. Our doctor tells us you're acting confused." Max chimed in, eyes avoiding mine. I felt poison in my veins. They wanted to strip me of my autonomy, claiming love as their excuse. I remember gripping the edge of the table to steady myself. "I am not confused," I said, feeling far clearer than I had in years. I saw the surprise on Max's face that I dared to speak so boldly. "I'm sharp as a tack, thank you very much. And you three are going to leave my house right now. Attorney Fisher opened his folder. Mrs. Berger, if I may, he said, draping his professional voice over a convincing show of concern. It might be best to sign a temporary power of attorney, so we can help you manage your finances. This is just to ensure your safety. He slid a stack of papers toward me. I looked at the pile of documents, a power of attorney that would put Max in charge of everything. My heart pounded. How easily they handed out legal threats like it was nothing. I glanced at Lena. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't pity. They were frustration and anger at being caught. Without hesitation, I swept the papers into a trash bin with a single motion. There is no help I need from you, I said, my voice unwavering. The only transition happening here will be yours, to the front door. My words, calm yet steel-edged, stunned them. Lena's eyes flashed, but she managed a quivering. We don't understand, Carol. We love you. You're like a mother to me. We'd never do anything to hurt you. But I could see through the rehearsed act now. They were entitled adults cornered without cash, not helpless kids. Max rose, raising his voice now that his lawyer wasn't speaking. Mom, we made plans based on your support. You co-signed for our rent, our car loan. What were we supposed to do now? I felt something I'd never felt directed at him before. Pity mixed with indignation. I don't know, Max, grow up and be responsible for your own life. For years, I had subsidized 2 incomes and never thought twice. But hearing him say our car, our rent, it was eye-opening. They hadn't been grateful. They had been entitled. The lawyer stood, closing his briefcase with finality. Mrs. Berger, he said coolly, be aware that if there are concerns about your mental health, the court could appoint a guardian. This wouldn't be permanent, but it would ensure your family can assist you. They were bluffing, but it landed like a blow. Legal guardianship meant they could control every aspect of my life. I flashed him a cold, determined look. I suggest you do your research before threatening a 71-year-old woman who has managed her own finances for 40 years. I replied evenly. I raised my son alone, took care of a household. And until last week I financed 2 perfectly capable adults. There is no mental deficiency here, only your greed. Lena's facade cracked. She screamed. We'll get everything we can by any means. You owe us. I shook my head sadly. You owe each other the courtesy of growing up. They stormed out, seething, their wounded pride flaring. Max gave me one last glare over his shoulder. This will end badly for you, he spat. I watched them go, then closed the door on them. The house that had echoed with my own tears was now filled with a triumphant silence. Freedom had never sounded so good. But I knew the war wasn't over. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Lena pleading from unknown numbers, threats of lawsuits. I switched it off. That night sleep didn't come. My brain raced with plans. Locks, cameras, new bank accounts, legal counters. By dawn, I had a to-do list that made me feel alive again. The next morning, I was at Mr. Wright's office. We filed for a temporary restraining order as I watched anxiously. The judge granted it on the spot. Suddenly, my own living room felt safer than it had in years. No more breaking and entering for your own good. Word got out quickly. Max and Lena were furious, but I had firm legal footing now. My phone calls were screened, my doors were locked, and most importantly, I wasn't giving in. Weeks later, I received a letter. Max and Lena had filed for guardianship. They had taken me to family court, claiming I was mentally incapable of handling my life. In a sick way, it was almost a compliment. They were desperate enough to risk everything for my money. Mr. Wright and I prepared meticulously. We gathered witness statements, neighbors and friends who had seen me lively and sharp. We documented our earlier diagnoses. I took no medications, had passed every checkup, paid all taxes on time. One by one, we confronted every smear they had sent to the court. The pharmacist, Mr. Green, testified that Lena had enticed him into signing a false statement about my medication habits. We made it clear I only bought vitamins. My neighbor Mr. Davis sheepishly admitted that he saw me installing cameras and immediately assumed it was paranoia. We showed it was simple self-protection after their break-ins. Max and Lena faltered on the stand when asked how many times in 3 years they had visited without asking for money. They had no answer. A top psychiatrist we hired confirmed I was not just competent, but in excellent health and mental condition. Finally, it was my turn to speak. I stood confidently before the judge and recounted everything. The $33,000 I had quietly spent out of love, the humiliation of being called special people while being excluded, the lies they told to strip me of my dignity. My voice was steady and clear. I did not stop giving because I lost my mind. I told the court, I stopped because I finally saw clearly. Max's lawyer tried to paint my self-respect as madness. But Mr. Wright's closing argument made the truth shine. This was not a failing mother in need of a guardian. It was a loving mother who had finally freed herself from emotional and financial exploitation. The judge listened intently, then delivered his verdict. This court finds that Mrs. Berger is fully competent to manage her affairs. Her decision to alter her financial support was a rational choice, not evidence of decline. Furthermore, the court is convinced by the presented evidence that these actions were financially motivated. The request for guardianship is denied. I exhaled, tears of relief welling in my eyes. I had won back my life, my rights, and my dignity. That evening, my friends gathered to celebrate. We toasted with wine on my patio to justice and to new beginnings. My neighbor and confidant, Mrs. Brooks, beamed at me. "Carol, you've reclaimed yourself." She was right. For the first time in decades, the future was mine. I sold the old house and moved to a lovely apartment downtown with sunlight in every room. I donated part of my savings to senior advocacy groups, determined to help others avoid the trap I fell into. With the rest, I finally lived. I took cooking classes. I booked train trips through the countryside. I painted with the easel I once bought them, only to never see again. Max and Lena? We never spoke again. Rumor was they were paying their own rent and taking out loans. I like to think the experience taught them something, maybe how to stand on their own feet. As I sit here on my balcony, the city lights twinkling below like a carpet of stars, I think back to the frightened woman I used to be. That woman, who measured love in dollars and fearfully answered every call. She is gone now. In her place stands someone far stronger. Now I know. True love can't be bought, and self-respect has no price tag. My name is Carol, and at 71 years old, I've finally learned that the most important person I can be is the one who loves and looks out for myself first.